Good evening, YouTube. And welcome. Welcome to the Talk Radio Climate Change Greenhouse Effect Challenge. My name's Deke Jackson, and this evening, if you accept the challenge, I'll be looking for you climate change deniers to phone in and explain to me in your own words what the greenhouse effect is and why it doesn't work. And the reason for this talk radio show, amongst other things, is first of all, I'm driving to Inverness, which is a 2.5 hour long drive, so plenty of time for you to Google that shit and get your shit together. And the other reason is I recently laid into climate change deniers and likened them, well, the shame is all theirs, Gerbot. And if I don't hear from anybody, I will assume they can't get that shit together. Yeah, everybody's fucked. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. You're still fucked. Because I don't know how I managed to get so many people who still were denying the climate watching my videos. I thought I had been very direct, very plain, very frank, very offensive, very insulting, and very clear on my position about climate change. We have fucked with the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is going to fuck with us, and the consequences, indeed, I don't expect you to be taking my £20, Gerbot. So if there's anybody left out there, I'm just wondering, because I had to block a lot of people. And I block you, if you're wondering why I block you, it's because I consider you to be exactly the same as flat earthers, Christians, Muslims, Jews, moon hoaxers, and other dumb, retarded morons. And you may not like that. That's fair enough. You know, you may think you're an erudite and well-educated person who's availed themselves of all of the information about climate change. Okay, James Owen, phone up, man. Phone in. Phone in and tell me all about the greenhouse effect and why it doesn't work. I'm waiting on your call. The telephone number's in the title. I'll give you 20 quid if you can mount a scientific argument as to why the greenhouse effect doesn't work. Lines are open now. Do we have a winner? If not, James, fuck off. That's right, you heard me. I said fuck off. I'm not your mom. This is not a popularity contest. I don't care if you like me, watch my videos, or you're offended. Fuck right off. Unless you can phone in and explain the greenhouse effect in your own words. You're welcome. In your own words. No sending me a link to, oh well, Jimmy Stewart says that it's solar flares. I don't give a shit what Jimmy Stewart says. Either you, for yourself. Life Raft, sun is the biggest driver of climate change. Blah, 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 blah. Really, is that the best you can do? I happen to agree with you, but that doesn't really explain the greenhouse effect, now does it? Which is kind of the purpose of this show. Yes, it is. It is what, James? You'll need to be more articulate. Also, for anybody out there, do I want to discuss CMIP6? I don't know what that shit is. I'm telling you what I'd like to discuss. I think it's quite clear from the title of the video, and also, and these will be my final words on the subject, I am going to be driving, so I won't be reading your messages. Is that clear? I cannot read your messages. Oh yeah, that's not exactly right, Life Raft. You know, you're sort of warm, you're getting warm. It's the science it's all based on, is it? That's not quite right. So obviously you're not familiar. The sun rules the climate. Again, James, I mean, you and I might agree about that, but I need to specifically hear exactly how the greenhouse works on a molecular level. Molecular level. What about the climate? Well, yeah, what about the climate? Who gives a fuck? Honestly, I don't give a fuck about humanity. Really, I don't. I'm a big fan of crocodile people. I think the crocodile people should get a chance. Or maybe the cockroach people. The average lifespan of a species on Earth is 4.5 million years, and people, we've had ours. So one way or another, you know, from a statistical average point of view, humans are on the way out. So, you know, Life raft. Geoengineering creates clouds that also traps the infrared. Again, you're warm, life raft, but you're not quite nailing it there. On a molecular level, please. On a molecular level, please. The action of the greenhouse effect vis-a-vis the gases and the energy from the sun, which I think we're all agreed on is where energy comes from. You know, except for a few extremophiles at the bottom of the ocean living on warm undersea vents, all life on Earth relies upon the sun for its energy. So, duh, our energy comes from the sun. What, is this fucking kindergarten? Like it's the sun. Yeah, exactly how? On a molecular level. All right, so once again, I cannot read your texts. I can't, and so I'm not going to try. Your chance to talk to me and explain on air to the internet the greenhouse effect and why it doesn't work in relation to climate change and global warming is by phoning the number in the thumbnail and in the sunspots. Molecular greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect and how it works on a molecular level with the gases and the energy. Okay, so I'm now going to turn the camera off so I won't even see your texts. I hope I'm being clear. I will not see your texts. Yeah, molecules and stuff. Very erudite and articulate, Sean Harris. So, okay, that'll be the last text I read. Boom! Okay, so now, people, I can't see your messages, so there's no point in sending them. Either you phone me and we talk about the greenhouse effect, or you fuck off. All right? Okay. Now, if nobody phones me, that's okay. I don't mind. You know, it's a long drive to Inverness, but I've done it a lot, so I'll be quite happy. I've got a nice cup of coffee here from McDonald's. It'll last me until, somewhere north of Perth. And then when I get to Aviemore, I'll have another cup of coffee, and that'll last me all the way to Inverness. So the telephone number, 07903 953 759. It's in the title of the video and the thumbnail. Phone me. Let's talk about the greenhouse effect. Or rather, if you're a climate change denier, let us listen to your explanation of how the greenhouse effect works according to the orthodox science and why it doesn't work in relation to why it is not causing the planet to be warmer. I'll get comfy, no rush, 2 hours on the road to Inverness. Take your time. Now, I appreciate a couple of things. Obviously, this is not a huge pool to draw this information from. I appreciate that there may be very few people tuning into this stream. So, you know, and also I appreciate that maybe many of you actually accept, if you like, the consensus on climate science, and that that you may be conversant with the greenhouse effect, that you don't feel the need to phone in because what the fuck. I am preaching to the choir, and you too perhaps would enjoy hearing from, if you like, the opposition. I know I would. I would very much like to hear from the opposition. because I have most recently received a lot of communications from the opposition, but none of them, I repeat, none of them, recently or in the past, have ever been able to articulate to me the greenhouse effect, how it works, and why it doesn't work in relation to anthropogenic global warming. Which is interesting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of climate denial out there, and I've certainly encountered many people who are in that camp and of that persuasion. Not one of them, ever. And I mean, this is now like, I would say this is over 20 years for me, possibly much longer, that it's been an issue for me and for all humanity. And the level of ignorance about it is astounding, given its seriousness and the potential for harm that it has on Earth. So you would think, you would think more people had done a modicum of research and availed themselves of the orthodox science, which, even if they are deniers, surely if they wish to deny it, they would be familiar with it so that they could debunk it. That is certainly what I would do. If I wished to debunk your ideas, I would first find out what they were, you know? And again, I should like to reiterate, I cannot read and do not read texts while I am driving. It's illegal and actually impossible because it's dark in here. So, you know, either phone in or save your energy, because I don't know what you're saying. And also, on a, you know, just on a sort of habitual nature, I do not read the live comments on videos, because it takes sometimes 24 to 48 hours for the live chat from a stream to appear on the video on YouTube, by which time, to be honest, I've moved on in life and I'm making other videos and so on. So just so you know, unless you're phoning in, it's going to be difficult for us to exchange views. The greenhouse effect has been known for over 100 years. And if I wasn't driving, I would Google it and tell you the chemist who discovered it. There was, once upon a time, a lot of experimentation being done with gases in bell jars, as the scientists on Earth sought to nail down the properties of gases that were in the atmosphere. And so there was a time, over 100 years ago, when a scientist discovered the way that CO2, I'm giving you a clue now, I don't want to give too much away, but CO2 has certain molecular properties in its bonds, which are important in relation to the greenhouse effect. And this was discovered over 100 years ago. Einstein himself gave forth, when they invented the internal combustion engine and started mass producing them, Einstein pointed out, do you think that's a good idea? What with the greenhouse effect and all? So it's not like this is a fantastically new or modern or invented thing. The greenhouse effect, you know, and how CO2 assists with it has been well known for over 100 years. So I don't think it's asking too much for climate change deniers to read a little bit about it. There's a Wikipedia. You know, I don't mind if you go away and Google it before we get into having a chat, but, you know, please do. And then you can tell me all about why it doesn't work. That's right. Because either the greenhouse effect does work or it doesn't work. In which case, there wouldn't be a problem if it didn't work, would there? Because the greenhouse effect is the cornerstone of the science that underpins global warming or climate change. I prefer global warming, since that's what's actually happening. Climate change, as a number of people will point out, climate change has always been happening, la-di-da-di-da, no kidding, except when we were just a rock. You know, there's a difference. To have a climate, you've got to have an atmosphere rather than an environment. You know, like if you were to land on an asteroid, I believe an asteroid may be an environment. When you get out of your spaceship on an asteroid in the vacuum of space, you will be in an environment, but there won't be a climate without an atmosphere. And we have an atmosphere, so we have a climate, and the climate changes because the atmosphere changes. That is indeed that's fundamentally the case of people who are proponents of the greenhouse effect and anthropogenic climate change. So, do please phone in anybody who would like to debate or deny climate change on any level whatsoever. The number is in the title of the video and on the thumbnail. So I'm kind of scratching my head, wondering what I really want to explain the greenhouse effect. I really do, but I feel that would be somewhat giving the game away to anybody who might be going to phone in, and perhaps. Hello, who's on the line?
Hello, Dick, it's Alistair McKinnon.
Alistair McKinnon, how are you doing?
I'm fine, sir. How's yourself?
Good, good. Have you phoned in to describe the greenhouse effect to me?
I phoned in because you look bored and I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Oh, you're going to play devil's advocate?
Oh, yes.
Oh, well, you'll have to explain the greenhouse effect first.
Okay, where do we start? Essentially, it was discovered by Arthur. This is way back a long time ago, about 1860 something, which is where a real problem with we're looking at the greenhouses, maybe we're a contained environment. However, it looks at the radiative forces coming from the sun that heats the greenhouse gases through infrared radiation, and that we as humans are now creating more greenhouse gases, containing carbon dioxide, which therefore rebounds within itself to create more heat, even though it's a trace element within the greenhouse itself of the atmosphere.
Okay, you're almost there. You're almost there. Energy from the sun arrives on planet Earth. We're all agreed that energy from the sun is what we're living on, yeah?
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And the energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere without creating a greenhouse.
No.
Yes, it does.
There's
See,
infrared heat coming off the sun.
already, Alistair, you're showing a lack of understanding there, because energy from the sun passes right through the atmosphere without creating any greenhouse effect whatsoever at all. None.
So the infrared heat from the sun doesn't interact, on its way down to the earth, doesn't interact with the
It's not infrared heat from the sun. We're too far away for that spectrum. It's photons. We receive our energy from the sun as photons. It's photons that pass through our atmosphere.
Are you hanging on the radiative being the only source of energy from the sun?
It's photons that pass. It's photons that reach us from the sun.
You're an astronomer, mate.
Yeah, we can look at.
It's not just photons that reaches from the sun. There are electromagnetic.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with all of the spectrums of electromagnetic radiation, and they're traveling to the Earth. And if you're familiar with the electric universe at all, Alistair, you should be familiar with the plasma insulating sheath.
Yes.
Right, so very, very, very few of the charged particles, protons, electrons and other things, actually make their way to the surface of planet Earth. Our electromagnetic barrier prevents that from happening. So it's the photons, Alistair, it's the photons.
then if you're aware of the electric universe, then you're also aware of the reduction of the electromagnetic field over the last 150 years. It's been reducing, it's reduced by 10% up to 2012, and it's reduced a further 5% since 2012. So there's been no update since 2014 on the reduction of the electromagnetic field, especially in the northern hemisphere.
I fail to see what this has got to do with the molecular action of the greenhouse effect in regard to CO2, which is what we're discussing, Alistair.
Well, I know you framed it that way.
Well, that is because that is the orthodox cornerstone of the science. So, you know, if you can't dismiss the orthodox cornerstone by first understanding it, then you don't really have a case, do you?
Well, wait, hold on. The cornerstone is the only order of climate change is carbon. That's the only force for climate change that we're looking at. Anthropogenic carbon forcing.
Yeah, and let's go back a little, Alistair. It's photons that come from the sun that pass through. It's photons that pass through the atmosphere. I need you to understand. I need you to understand that the orthodox explanation is that the greenhouse effect is caused by a molecular property of CO2 and how that interacts with energy from the sun. Right? Okay, so unless you can articulate what the orthodox case is, you cannot dismiss it. Hello? Yeah, since the orthodox case and cornerstone of the greenhouse effect is that photons from the sun pass through the atmosphere without creating any greenhouse effect, what happens to them next? Yeah, so photons from the sun, they reach planet Earth, they pass through the atmosphere without creating any greenhouse effect. What happens next?
That primary position is a wrong position.
Well, that is...
I understand what the question is. But I disagree with them. This is where I became an atheist when it came to kind of climate science and climate change. I'm sure it's a long time looking at this.
Are there no photons?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to get from you, like, either I'm going to repeat myself again. Either you can articulate the orthodox version of how the greenhouse effect works, or you can't. So,
look, according to our house, we have this atmosphere as a greenhouse. It's capped off. Carbon and green element gas was highlighted by him as a possible retaining heat. But the kind of funky thing about this whole thing is that when you look at the graphs of heat on the planet, when carbon did increase, the temperatures went down.
if you can't tell me what CO2 does, then who cares how much there is? You can't tell me what CO2 does. How does CO2 warm the planet?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Well, then you don't really you don't really have a case, Alistair. First of all, you have to you have to articulate the premise of the orthodox before you can dismiss it. You can't just say it just doesn't.
True. Give me 5 minutes. I'll call you back.
Okay. Good luck. Go away and Google that. Well, man, I think you should, because you're obviously got major holes in your knowledge of the orthodox case. Yeah. Okay. Right. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good effort. Something or other. Something happens. Something carbon, but there isn't any, and it doesn't. Blah, 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 blah. Really, if you're going to dismantle the case for anthropogenic global warming vis-a-vis the greenhouse effect and carbon dioxide, your very first step has to be to articulate what the cornerstone of the orthodox case is. chapter and verse, people. None of this woolly, well, you know, it's something like the sun does something to CO2 and it says it gets warm. No, man, you have to be able to describe on a molecular level what the cornerstone of greenhouse effect is. And that includes the changing energy states that energy from the sun goes through before it becomes trapped in our atmosphere. Now, this is second year chemistry for me, okay? To some of you it may seem awfully complicated, but it's not really. It's not that complicated. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that climate change isn't complicated, but the cornerstone effect, the greenhouse effect, and how it works, how the energy is involved, what happens to the energy from the sun, how it ends up trapped, and in what form, that's a very simple, I could tell you it in 2 sentences. 2 sentences. So this is not complicated stuff. And I am a big fan of the electric universe and plasma cosmology, and I am well versed in what the plasma cosmologists Alfvén and Birkeland have discovered about plasma. Those are 2 scientists who did the most to advance plasma cosmology, by the way. So if anybody is thinking they can phone up and flannel or flummox me with some electric universe stuff, give it your best shot, because I'm a major fan and I am steeped in their theories and practices. Hans Alfvén built a tellurium on Earth. He has recreated nearly every aspect of the universe in a plasma tank on Earth using electrodes and gases. He long before NASA was pointing at electric ropes, which are Birkeland currents, to give them their correct name. Electric ropes is the kind of euphemistic bullshit NASA used to kind of pretend that Birkeland didn't discover what was going on in space 100 years ago. Birkeland currents are how electric currents propagate through plasma. Plasma is the 4th state of matter. 99.999% of the entire universe is plasma. The stuff that's solid, that you think you see, that stuff, the planets, the stars, you know, my cup of coffee, your body, that is 0.0001% of universe. Most of the universe is electrically charged gas, and what happens in it because of charge separation is what plasma cosmologists are involved in researching and studying. And I consider myself to be a plasma cosmologist, so don't imagine you're going to phone up and just say, it's all about a magnetic rope stick, because I'm going to need a little bit more than that to go on. There are certain properties of the carbon dioxide molecule that make it and others a problem in our atmosphere when they start interacting with the sun's energy after it's been around for a while. You really do need to articulate exactly what the cornerstone orthodox case for the greenhouse effect is at the molecular level. Otherwise, you're just phoning up to say, no, it doesn't. Oh, no, it doesn't. It's not a fucking pantomime, all right? This is not panto season. I did not get dressed up tonight to fence with fucking, you know, the ugly sisters and, you know, Cinderella. So please, don't just tell me it's behind you and, oh, no, it doesn't, because I will just fucking cut you off. You will have to know what energy from the sun arrives on Earth, where it goes, what happens to it, and what happens next at the carbon dioxide molecule. Okay? I mean, as a rejoinder to that, and post being able to explain even that most simple fact of the problems humans face on this planet at this time, you could also then go on to tell me how many billions of tons of CO2 we're putting into the atmosphere each year, per man and child on the planet, on an individual basis. If you're interested in climate change, like I am. In short, people, you better be really well informed, not only about what the orthodox cornerstone claim to the greenhouse effect is, but why it doesn't work. Not just it doesn't work, that surely won't cut it, as a scientific discussion. That's not really enough, is it? Now, I might have to pull over and check my communications because Alistair was a little quiet and I think my aux cord might be coming loose. So there's another McDonald's along here in Perth. I will just whip into a lay-by, check my aux cord, because I would thoroughly enjoy a hearty conversation of a scientific nature with a well-informed opponent who can dismiss my concerns about the greenhouse effect with more than "it doesn't work." It doesn't work has not relieved my anxieties about the state of the planet. So, I hope you've got a little more than that. Bada bing bang bang. So the electric universe, interesting that should come up, and since I'm dying to tell you all about the greenhouse effect, but I feel that would be counterproductive to the discussion. So let's talk about the electric universe instead. Once upon a time, the astronomers of Earth, not the really cool ones like in my religion, but the ones who are paid money to call themselves astronomers, they decided at a conference in Copenhagen that in the early universe, after the Big Bang, which is a theory, so you'd think they'd have been more cautious in their determination to make absolute statements, but they determined that absolutely all positive and negative charges were cancelled out during a period called expansion. And this means, because there are no positive and negative charges to be separate from each other in universe, that according to orthodox science, there is therefore no electricity in space. Alright, now this is a major mistake. This is a huge, huge mistake. It's even bigger than the Earth is the center of the universe. It's even bigger than that as a mistake, which we went, for hundreds of years we thought the Earth was the center of the universe, which was a mistake, obviously, and eventually we found out it wasn't. Well, the idea that there's no electricity in space has been a huge mistake, and one which, if they hadn't said that, Einstein, whose family were electrical engineers, Einstein himself was an electrical engineer, which is why he got the job at the Swiss Patent Office, because he knew enough about electricity to determine if the vast amount of patents for electrical devices that were piling up on the desks of the Swiss Patent Office, it was his job to determine if any of them were actually worthy of issuing a patent. So Einstein knew all about electricity, and if astronomers had told Einstein, oh, there's loads of electricity in space, he would have added the electromagnetic force to his calculations and come up with some much more accurate theories. So because they dismissed electricity from universe, we're left with gravity, and orthodox cosmology consists entirely of people wearing gravity goggles. And by that I mean, when they look out into space, they're looking at it with a set of eyes that believe only gravity is capable of ordering and creating the large-scale structures of the universe. Planets, moons, stars, solar systems, galaxies. It is the belief of orthodox astronomy that only gravity is shaping the large-scale structures of the universe. Whereas if you factor in electricity, you suddenly have the strongest of the four forces, electromagnetism, to create all of these structures, which would mean that all of that pish about dark energy, dark matter, black holes and the Big Bang, that became pish, and you could do away with that because electromagnetic forces, being so much more powerful, hundreds, thousands of times more powerful than gravity, allow for the creation much quicker of the large-scale structures in the universe in completely different ways. So, the electric universe, for anybody who's not familiar with it, proposes that electricity does exist in the universe, obviously, does what it says on the tin, and that it is the action of electric currents, Birkeland currents, twisted pairs, propagating through plasma from charge-separated areas of space, positive and negative, whatever that means. And in these Birkeland currents, occasionally the insulating plasma sheath fails or is overwhelmed at a place called a pinch point. And at that pinch point, because the insulation fails, what happens is that huge electromagnetic forces are released. And it's these electromagnetic forces that suck the dust of space, the stuff, the atoms and other molecules that are in space, suck them in like a giant electromagnet, for that is what it is, and form stars, form planets, form moons. That's what is making the universe up. It's electricity through pinch points in Birkeland currents. And we're connected to the sun through a Birkeland current, and the sun is connected to the galaxy through a Birkeland current. It's basically like a huge, you know, the flying spaghetti monster? I think they were pretty close to the truth in some mystical way, because universe is like a giant and pinch points. You could call these pinch points sparks, if you like, because in a kind of electrical sense, that's what they are. All right. I have found a lay-by. I'm just checking my comms. So, lines are open. Whatever the number is, it's in the title of the show and it's in the thumbnail. So if anybody else would like to take a stab at the Greenhouse Effect Challenge, do please phone in. I genuinely enjoy talking to people about science. It's one of the things in life that I get off on. I don't mean in a sexual way at all. I mean, like, I think it's wonderful that we can know. I think there's a joy in knowing. I think that there is a something splendid and wonderful about being able to penetrate, not in a sexual way, penetrate the mysteries of time, space, matter, and reality, and reveal, pull back the curtain even a little bit, peer through the mist and discern something, you know, even just a little bit. I think that's wonderful, and I really do enjoy it. So anything which added to the realm of knowledge for me or other people is good as far as I'm concerned. And so I enjoy scientific discussion, and I look forward to somebody phoning up even to argue with me on a scientific basis. that one part of science is or is not correct, because I also believe that science is not right about everything. The scientific process is the right way to approach problems, mysteries, ignorance and unknowing. But that doesn't mean that science is little. But what it does know is known. What we know, I think, is quite clear, that we do know certain things and that we can know more. So, if you think you know what the greenhouse effect is, do please phone up in 10 minutes or so, just because I've got to get on with the drive. Oh. Ooh. There we go. I'm in average speed land. So I'll tell you what, at the end of average speed land, I'm going to explain the greenhouse effect and bring the show to an end, because I'm going to have to put my foot down once the average speed is over. So this goes on for like 10-15 miles, I believe. It finishes Bankfoot or Burnham Wood, somewhere like that. So you've got that long to phone up and undermine the orthodox explanation of the greenhouse effect. Alistair had a shot, but he didn't seem to acknowledge that photons do indeed pass through the atmosphere without doing anything to the greenhouse effect. In fact, the sun's energy reaches us in photons. Sure, there's some infrared energy emanating from the sun, but we're a very, very long way from it. And so that's not what the greenhouse effect gets. Not the sun's, anyway. I mean, that's a bit of a clue there, but you know, I don't want to say too much. You should Google that Wikipedia for yourself. And remember, if you don't know the orthodox version of the greenhouse effect, you can hardly disagree with climate change. This is one of the things that's annoyed me about climate change deniers. Honestly, you have no idea how annoying this is. The greenhouse effect is the cornerstone of why the planet is warming up. So if you can't articulate it, if you don't know what that is, how could you possibly deny it? How could you possibly disagree with it if you didn't know what it was? Really, what kind of hubris is it? Yeah, I've heard all about the theory of relativity. I don't know what it is, but it's obviously rubbish. That's the level of ignorance I have been dealing with for 20 years with climate deniers. Not once, I repeat, in my entire life of promoting that we are indeed responsible for altering our atmosphere and changing our climate, have I encountered anyone who denied it, who could articulate the greenhouse effect. Not once. And honestly, I've tried. I've done this more than once. I have done this more than once. So, you know, hope springs eternal. Phone up, prove me wrong, deny the greenhouse effect, and explain to me why it doesn't work. Man, I'll get carried away again. I'm speeding. And I'm now in a 30. Shit. Alright, 30 is going to be a toughie. I have quite a heavy foot. So, yeah, the electric universe, the sun, as Alistair was mentioning earlier, and you'll hear this from a lot of climate change deniers. The sun is the source of all our power. Well, yes it is. And some interesting things about the sun. The surface of the sun is 5,000 degrees C. I mean, that's like a nice hot fire temperature, you know. That's probably, you know, you'd be lucky to get a forge up to 5,000 degrees C. You know, you'd have to work real fucking hard, but you might be able to get an actual fire in a blast furnace or something like that. You might be able to get up to 5,000 degrees C. That's the surface of the sun. When you're looking at the sun, the surface of it is 5,000 degrees C. and the sun is a long, long, long way away. And if we were relying on a 5,000 degree C fireball all that distance away to warm us up, there would be no life on planet Earth, and this would be a frozen rock in space. So if the surface of the sun's not where the heat is, where is it? Well, it's the upper, it's an area of the sun they call the heliosphere, which is an electrically charged, but I thought there was no electricity. That's right. That's what they say. But in fact, the area of the sun that is hot is 5 million degrees C. That's the temperature of lightning, funnily enough, which is an electrical discharge. What a coincidence. And because of this anomaly, right, NASA has just sent a solar probe to the sun to try and find out what's going on. Why is the surface of the sun so cool? That's the temperature of a nuclear fire, 5,000 degrees C. And its upper atmosphere so hot, the temperature of electricity, when there's no electricity in space, and yet there is our star, a giant electrical spark. And the heat from it that we're living on is the heat from the electrical output, not the heat from the chemical fireball. There's a chemical fireball that forms the ball of fire that we see, and there's the electrical discharge, which is an upper atmosphere sheath. It's a separate sphere, if you like, not separate in the sense that it's nothing to do with it, but it is not physically, as we would understand it, part of the mass of the sun. And I believe we are on the cusp of a Copernican moment where NASA, amongst other people, finally admit that they were wrong about there being no electricity in space. And they announce a huge raft of revisions to cosmology and the theories that underpin the large-scale structures of the universe. But hey, don't hold your breath. But I believe that is coming. And yes, the sun's energy has a direct effect on our climate. A lot of climate change deniers seem to think they're saying something profound when they say, it's the sun, it is indeed the sun. And the sun's energy, when it reaches planet Earth, does lots of different things. And one of them is the greenhouse effect. So nobody's disputing that the sun is the source of all our power, to quote Monty Python. What's at issue is what is happening to some of the sun's energy in our atmosphere because of greenhouse gases. I mean, I'm giving more clues here as we go, so you know, eventually I'm just going to tell y'all. So, of course, a lot of the science of even matter and energy is only slightly understood. So science cannot claim to know everything, but it can certainly claim to make decent observations at a chemical and molecular level, which is what greenhouse effect is. I mean, we're not dealing with esoteric quantum mechanics here. You're talking about second-year chemistry, so it's not a big ask to expect people to know what it is and be able to articulate it. Okay, I'm coming to the end. It seems that they must have finished the road because it looks like it's finishing much sooner than I expected. Whee! All right. Here we go. And that is the end. Okay, so I'm going to have to get on with the drive. So I'm going to explain the orthodox cornerstone of anthropogenic global warming, that is the greenhouse effect. Are you ready? Here we go. All right, energy from the sun in the form of photons. A photon is poorly understood. You know, is it a particle? Is it a wave? There's a debate about that at the quantum level. One of the best explanations I've ever heard is that it travels as a wave and interacts as a particle. So we'll go with that one. All right, so photons travel from the sun towards the Earth. When they meet the Earth, the photons pass through the atmosphere. They are not stopped in the atmosphere. They do not cause a greenhouse effect on their way in. The photons are not trapped by CO2. That's not what happens. The photons reach the surface of the Earth. They strike the surface of the Earth and their energy is absorbed. Now, the energy of a photon is quite small. I forget what it is. I used to know 1.8 something to the power minus something kilovolts. It's a tiny, 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 tiny amount of energy, but it is an amount of energy, and there are lots of photons. These photons strike the surface of the Earth, and their energy is absorbed by matter. You know, the road, the dirt, the soil, the whatever it is that the photon hits, its energy is absorbed. Now, it's a maxim in science: all energy is heat, all heat is energy. So when the photon is absorbed by matter, the matter that it has struck and that has absorbed the photons is slightly warmed up. Okay? That matter does not emit photons, right? Photons are another part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and they're part of a visible, obviously photons is what we can see. Once the photon has hit some mass and been absorbed, it's re-emitted as infrared radiation, which is invisible to human eyes. This infrared radiation is emitted from the matter which has absorbed the photons into the atmosphere. Big deal! Let it be emitted, I hear you say. I agree. Some of it travels through the atmosphere and reaches space and doesn't bother us at all. It's no problem. Let the infrared energy be emitted from the surface of the planet back into space, whence it came. Good riddance to the energy from the photon that struck the matter that became an infrared energy wave. However, some of it, in passing through the atmosphere, encounters greenhouse gases. Now, a greenhouse gas, to be a greenhouse gas, you have to have a particular kind of molecular bond. Greenhouse gases are all molecules, and the reason is because it's their bonds which are the problem. Between carbon and oxygen, CO2, there are two oxygens and one carbon. There are these bonds. They're called chemical bonds, I guess, or molecular bonds. But what they are is a way of atoms, pure elements, being joined together in a way that makes them a cohesive other thing. So carbon and oxygen become carbon dioxide when they're joined together. Now, those bonds have certain properties, and in the case of greenhouse gases, the property is that they resonate with electromagnetic, with infrared energy from the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, imagine it's a guitar string, right? You've got a carbon dioxide molecule and it's joined together by two guitar strings and they're tuned to the note A. All right? Well, infrared energy is a note. Oh, I'm just using this for an example that corresponds with the string A. Oh. So when the infrared energy encounters the carbon dioxide molecule, the bonds within the molecule vibrate in sympathetic resonant vibration. And because all energy is heat and all heat is energy, the infrared energy resonating in the atomic bonds between carbon and oxygen have now got heat. They are resonating because they resonate. They are emitting that infrared energy back towards the planet. So the heat doesn't leave the planet. The energy that was a photon that became infrared, instead of going back out into space, strikes a CO2 molecule, resonates the atomic bonds, which vibrate, and at an atomic level, all atomic activity can be measured as heat. Absolute zero is theoretically impossible to achieve because it is a state of zero atomic activity, no vibrations at all. All vibrations at a molecular and atomic level are a sign of energy, and all energy is heat. Therefore, infrared energy coming back from the surface of the planet, headed for space, is trapped, in inverted commas, by greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, where it stays for a long time, hundreds of years in the case of CO2, hundreds of years, keeping us nice and warm. The greenhouse effect has been operating as long as we've had greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, and without it, this planet would be 16 degrees C on average, that's a global mean surface temperature average, lower, which means your ass would be frozen to fucking death if it wasn't for the greenhouse effect. People who say the greenhouse effect doesn't work are claiming that this planet is magically kept warm by something like fairy dust. The greenhouse effect is this planet warm. I should like to say again, I cannot read your messages, nor am I going to read them. I assure you, I've got way too many interesting things to do with my life than go back over videos on YouTube from 2 days ago and read the live chat comments. So unless you phone up, we're not interacting, okay? Just so you know, all right? And so that's the greenhouse effect. And then so if you're out there and you didn't know that already, I hope you learned something interesting. And if you think that doesn't work, I'm still open to hearing how, but it won't be tonight because I really must get on with my drive. It's beginning to rain. I should really be concentrating on the road. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Alistair for phoning up. I may do this again sometime, and I hope that I find it incredibly interesting and entertaining if somebody could disavow me of my belief in the operation of the greenhouse effect. I really would. I would find it fascinating to hear your arguments for how that does not work. So, let's do this again sometime, and hopefully we'll all learn something. And isn't that a good idea? Right, I'm gonna have to sign off now. It's it's dark, it's raining, there's big fucking trucks on the road. So thanks for tuning in. Great, I'm headed to Inverness where I may stream my busk tomorrow. Toodle pip, have a great night.